Hello, everybody. It is Tuesday in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, assistant sports editor for multimedia at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, joined by Colin Beazley, our Pirates insider for our latest Pirates offseason podcast. We're talking about reports today that the Pirates intend to spend money this offseason. Do we believe them? How would we qualify significant spending from Ben Cherington and Bob Nutting in this moment? We're going to dive into all that. We also have some names from Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic and Fox Sports in terms of connecting them to the Pirates: Ryan O'Hearn, Jorge Polanco, Kazuma Okamoto, and then a couple of DFA candidates that Pirates haven't specifically, non-tender casualties that the Pirates haven't specifically been connected to, but may potentially be interested now that they're available. Before we get into all that, we want to remind you that this show is presented by FanDuel. Okay, Colin. There's been multiple reports this week saying the Pirates are going to spend this offseason. Some putting that number over the $100 million mark. I have a couple questions for you about those reports. A, is this just the classic Pirates accounting trick of where they classify money that's coming off the books as new spending? They love to do this going back over the last handful of years. I remember one year, Frank Coonelly in particular, when they had a bunch of free agent money coming off the books, they said they were going to spend more. And it was really just arbitration money that was going to boost the payroll, that they were going to have to pay out to people anyway. That's a classic Pirates tactic to make it look like they're spending more than they are. They'll basically say from the bottom of where the payroll could bottom out to the top of where it goes is what you should give them credit for, regardless of what last season's payroll was. Which brings me to part B here. SpotRack had them at $84 million for the final payroll for 2025. So if we're talking about $100 million, do you look at that threshold more as symbolic, as hitting those triple figures there in the $1 million category? As a, kind of just a threshold the Pirates don't crack, but it's also only $16 million more than where they were a year ago. Is it that significant if they get to 100, let's say maybe even 105, 110?
Well, first off, the $84 million that they ended at, that was after they got a number of their bigger contracts off the books at the deadline. That was after dealing Brian Hayes. That was after dealing or getting rid of Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. That was kind of like that wasn't their beginning of the year number. That was once the season was over and they realized you might as well shed some contracts and trade some guys. As for the 100, 110 million, whatever it ends up being, those aren't necessarily numbers that I'd heard, and they're a little bit different than what we'd reported earlier. I don't know if something's changed. Maybe they took the message from Paul Skenes and decided to spend money now, but it's definitely something I'll have to see to believe. As for the overall spending money, the 30 to 40 million was something that had been reported earlier this offseason. I don't make much of that because that's what they'd have to spend to get back to roughly what they were last year. That's what they'd have to spend because they don't have Brian Hayes, they don't have IKF, they don't have Kutch and Pham and all that right now. $30 to $40 million, that would just get them back to where they were. Obviously, if it ends up being 40 to 50 or 50 to 60 and you get more into like the 100, 110 range, then great. The payroll has actually gone up. It has actually been raised. But until they do that, I'm not sure I buy it.
Well, I don't buy the notion that they're even where they should be, even if they get to that threshold, because 100 million is about where they were in 2016, Colin, before they started kind of tearing things down a little bit when they started having those losing seasons in 2016, 17, leading into 18, the last winning season. That's where the threshold was. They tore it all the way down to the studs. And now with all of the extra money flowing into the sport, it seems like they very much are trying to message that, we get back to 100 million. That's symbolic of our commitment to win with Paul Skenes. I'm not there. There's been so much new money in the game that going back merely to where you were a decade ago, to me, is you don't deserve credit. That should be the starting point for the conversation, not the ending point. So do I believe that they could hit 100 million? Yes. Am I ready to say, go crazy, folks? The Pirates are serious because they're going to get to where they were in 2016? No. I'm not prepared to give them credit even if they get there. Let me see the composition of the team first, but the number value does not impress me. Let's talk about some of these names. Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic threw them out there. Jeff Passan had mentioned a couple of them as well going back to last week, but there were a few new ones in the Ken Rosenthal reporting that both of us found interesting while we were prepping the show. Ryan O'Hearn of formerly of the Orioles is 117 home runs last year, just over an 800 OPS. First baseman and corner outfielder, can kind of play both spots. Obviously, the Pirates have needs kind of in both territories, depending upon what you're doing with Spencer Horwitz on a given day. Is he a good fit with what this team needs in your eyes?
Well, yeah, he's got positional flexibility, so he's a perfect Pirate already. That's great. He can play a lot of spots. Done, Pirate. No, but I think that is a good fit. I think he'd represent a player that would improve the team. He would represent a proven major league bat. He's got some pop. He's had major league success. I think you'd probably see him as more of an outfielder than a first baseman. Yeah, he can play some first base, but with Spencer Horwitz being the Pirates' best hitter at first base, you've got a greater need in left field. That's where I'd slot him in. Ryan O'Hearn is a name that I'd heard too. That's something that didn't necessarily come out of left field for me. I'd kind of heard a little bit of talk of that, and I think it'd be a good signing. I think it's something where you'd have to go into the multi-year range to get it. You'd have to offer him probably 2 years, potentially even 3, but it's something where it would have to be a multi-year deal, but it wouldn't be too cost prohibitive. I think it would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think the question is at 2-3 years, what is the dollar value going to be? Because I think when I had the stats up earlier, it was a little over 2 wins above replacement. I mean, on the open market, Colin, that easily is worth like 45, 50 million just back of the envelope. You don't think so?
I mean, by that math, or by 1 WAR equals 8 million, then yeah, that adds up there. But all the contract projections I've seen for O'Hearn are far below that. I've seen 9, 10, 11 million, somewhere in there. And that's something I think that should be doable. I don't have the exact MLB trade rumors or ESPN or athletic projections in front of me, but nothing I've seen when I did look at those were numbers that I thought, oh, the Pirates could not or should not do that.
Well, I guess that's immaterial. Yeah, I mean, if it's in that range, it certainly seems like that's what should have been doable for the Pirates over a period of time. It's exactly the contract we talked about last week that they haven't signed in recent years. That doesn't seem like it should be out of their range. It's just a sizable commitment over a period of years if it doesn't work out. But again, as we talked about with like Tommy Pham, he kind of never had the chance to really latch on. And granted, he's older, so how much runway did he really have? But he was an example of a guy you bring in for 1 year. He has a couple bad months, and that basically soured the whole contract for everyone, even though he found things toward the end of the season. If you have a guy you're investing a little bit more in, you have a little bit more runway, and hopefully you get a little bit more payoff, even though you are spending a little bit more money than you were for a Tommy Pham type.
You compared this last time, but Tommy Pham is 37 years old. Like I see what you're saying there, but it's a little bit different when you're comparing someone at Tommy Pham or Andrew McCutchen's age to someone like an O'Hearn or someone like the guys we'll talk about later, where they're going to be around for longer just because they're younger. With Tommy Pham, he's kind of at the stage of his career where he's only going to be signing 1-year deals just because you have no idea how his age will affect him. So
right, and I think
I see what you're saying there, but I feel like I got to push back on that one a little bit.
It's a value judgment of why are you signing these guys that basically have to hit immediately for it. You're right. He's only going to be signing 1-year contracts, but I don't know that was or should be a fit with what the Pirates needed with as many needs as they proved to have on offense. Andrew McCutchen's kind of his own special case. I don't really consider him in that category. I consider more like a Tommy Pham type deal because let's say you signed a Ryan O'Hearn type this year, it would have cost you what, maybe by the number we're talking about, maybe $4 or $5 million more to have a guy over the next 3 years that could still be a contributor for you, and would have the ability to work through some of those struggles and still pay off the contract. That's kind of how I'm looking at it. Is you're giving $5 million, for one season to one guy rather than paying just a little bit more to have a little more consistency there and have some runway for a guy. So that's more how I'm comparing them and not apples to apples. Let's get into another name. Jorge Polanco was on Ken Rosenthal's list. 26 home runs, 821 OPS. Good numbers, especially for a guy up the middle. However, Colin, I can't believe we're talking about them potentially signing a guy to significant money, considering all of the draft picks and investment they've made in the middle infield in recent years. And considering Connor Griffin, many people are hoping we're going to see him at some point in 2026.
Yeah, Jorge Polanco is not necessarily a name that I buy as much, or I can see them going after. Good that they're interested. The Pirates should be interested in any major league hitter that's going to help the team, which is like they should be interested in just about everyone on the free agent market. So good that they're interested in a guy like Jorge Polanco. But I don't necessarily see him going anywhere after what they did in Seattle. I think that he will have offers to play places for either more money than the Pirates are going to offer, or at a bare minimum, places that have been more competitive than Pittsburgh in recent years. I think that the Mariners will probably try to keep him. And if the Mariners keep him and it comes down to the Mariners or the Pirates would have to offer a whole lot more than the Mariners would. They'd have to overpay for the guy in order to get him to come somewhere that hasn't had the playoff success, that hasn't had the culture, that hasn't had as good of a season as the Mariners have had in quite some time. So I'm glad the Pirates are interested. I think it's worth showing interest in all of these guys, but I don't expect much to come of that one.
Yeah, and I mean, you do have to have some kind of bridge to Connor Griffin. It's just, when we're sitting here in the offseason doing things on paper and you're saying, if Connor Griffin's here at some point in the summer, who else is going to be in that, second base spot? So many people have been talking up Nick Gonzalez for seemingly my entire life. And they're just going to move on from him. I think that's still an open question of whether he can be a contributor on this team. So, I'm not as enthusiastic about that as I would be about a Ryan O'Hearn type, but we'll see how that unfolds. Before we move on,
he's primarily a second baseman. I wouldn't expect him to be playing shortstop for whoever he ends up signing with. And I do think that second base is a spot that they should be looking to upgrade at some point. Not necessarily. I'm fine with giving Nick Gonzalez another year to prove that 2025 was a rough season. That said, he wasn't quite good enough in 2025.
No, and if we weren't talking about the Pirates, then different conversation about whether he's a guy that you need to replace. I just don't look at that as a position that just seems as deficient as some of the others. So, you're right. He's more of a second baseman by trade, but you never really know how the Pirates are going to attempt to use their guys defensively. So we'll monitor that situation. We're going to move on here in a second. Before we do, just want to remind you that FanDuel has the offseason futures odds. The Pirates are currently plus 10,000, Colin, to win the National League. If you're feeling froggy about these reports that they're going to spend some money, maybe head over there and spend some money of your own to put your cash behind the Pirates, though I would certainly not recommend that myself. But otherwise, check out our friends at FanDuel. Colin, Kazuma Okamoto is one of the big names expected to come over from Japan. Nearly 300 home runs over there. Still hasn't turned 30 yet. I would imagine he's going to have some level of market over here. Is he a viable target for the Pirates?
I think he should be. He's someone who plays a position of need at third base. He's someone that, again, he probably won't be out of the Pirates' price range, but you would have to pay a fair amount for him. You don't necessarily know what you're getting when you sign a player out of Japan. You don't know whether he's going to have immediate success or will take time to adapt or anything there. So there is some inherent level of risk there, but Okamoto is someone who does a lot of things that the Pirates need. He plays the position of need. He hits for a lot of pop. He's someone you could put in the middle of the lineup and kind of just set or forget about it. And I think the Pirates should be interested in him and would be a very good addition if they're able to sign him.
Yeah, what is the industry comparison? A lot of times I'll hear people say, what, it's like the equivalent of AA over there. But when you have a guy who's almost 30, sometimes we talk about apples to apples comparisons. You know, you don't hit almost 300 home runs at any level of baseball without having some level of know-how. So how do you weigh that in the conversation? How should we view, because the Pirates haven't kind of gone this direction in some time, how should we view Japan and the level of ball that he was competing at?
You can see it in two different ways. There's some inherent level of risk, obviously, like I just mentioned, but you can see it either the Pirates are in a position where they need to be taking risk, which I think they are. I think they're in a spot where you need to be taking a bet in some less proven guys, or at the same time, you can say, if you only have this much money to spend, you can't risk signing some guy to a big deal and it not working out. I think of those two, I would go more towards the being risk friendly. Like, I don't know whether that's a term, but going towards something that you don't necessarily know will work out, like an Okamoto, just because if it does, it's something you need so desperately. But I also could see something where the Pirates are worried about that and saying, oh, if we're going to spend 60, 65 million, however much he's projected to get, then we want to sign someone who's done it in the major leagues. You can go either way there, but I think the Pirates are in a position where they need to take some risks, some swings.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I look back at Jung Ho Gung and how that worked out for the Pirates as kind of a finishing piece to that 2015 team where you already had a solid team built, and then you said, "Hey, we think this is one guy who we could get maybe cheaper." I mean, they got him pretty cheap. Get cheaper than the market rate. Who carries a level of risk, but that if it pays off, things will work out. I felt like that was the right moment for them at that time. I think there are more proven commodities. We were talking about Ryan O'Hearn earlier. I think even Jorge Polanco falls in that category of, if you're going to spend some money, don't you want to have a little bit more proven major league experience because you have so many holes. If you're a couple years ahead in this process and you only got two big holes in your lineup and he's maybe the guy you want to spend on to fill one and you're retaining your other players, that I can see. I just worry that if you're still kind of building this thing, is that the risk you want to be taking at this stage of the process? And granted, the Pirates should be further along. They shouldn't have all these questions heading into year 7 of Ben Cherington here, but they do, and we have to operate with where they are rather than where they should be. So I'm a little bit skeptical of that signing, but I can see why it would be appealing to the Pirates as a potential source of market upside as well.
Yeah, I worry about that too. With, say, just sticking with third base, you sign a guy like Eugenio Suarez, he's probably going to be about a $60 million player at his ceiling. You know you're probably signing him based upon as good as he can be. Whereas a guy like Okamoto, maybe he can outperform his contract more than, say, a Suarez can. Is that a risk you want to take? I don't know. That's not the decision for me to take. But I'd say there's probably more of a chance he doesn't perform up to his contract, but there's also more chance, if you're taking a swing, that he overperforms his contract than a guy like Suarez.
Yeah. But again, with as many holes, is that where you want to go? I guess we'll find out what the Pirates want to do strategically. Colin, let's talk about a couple guys who were non-tendered across baseball. JJ Bleday, Adolis Garcia. Bleday is what I wrote in my notes here, a ghost of Pirates trade deadlines past, a guy that they were connected to multiple times, never actually finished the deal for. Adolis Garcia has, that great October in 2023 that people probably remember. And if you haven't been paying as much attention to him lately, sub 700 OPS guy. Do you look at either one of them as maybe unexpected candidates to help the Pirates fill some needs where, we didn't know that they'd maybe be available, but now that they are, where do they belong in these conversations to you?
I think that every team in baseball that needs slugging and needs hitting is going to at least take a look at Adolis Garcia. He's someone who, at his best, can be so good. I mean, we saw it in October of 2023. That was a legacy-defining month for him, where he just lit the postseason on fire and kind of led the Rangers to that World Series title. He hasn't been as good over the last 2 years, so I do worry about it. And it's definitely something where he'd come in and you'd kind of have to fix him. You'd have to figure out what went wrong over the last 2 years and tinker with him. Is that something that I necessarily think the Pirates are best equipped for? I don't know. But at the same time, with where the Pirates were, you can't get worse than being 30th in the major leagues in homers and in runs. The Pirates can afford to take a bet like that and bet on his upside. I don't think he'd be too expensive either. The Rangers were not willing to pay him, I think, $10 million. So he'd probably be somewhere you could get for maybe half that and give him a shot on a 1-year deal. I think it's a bet that might be worth taking.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think even at his trough of production here, he's still like a 670 OPS guy. How many guys in this Pirates lineup and on this roster would you look at a 670 OPS and be like, that's exactly where he needs to be? You would take that from so many guys that we've invested so much time talking about. So if that's kind of your floor with an Adolis Garcia, and you believe that there is still some upside to mine there, definitely has to be on the radar. Do you have any thoughts on Bleday?
Bleday, you could also look at upside there. I mean, he was a former 4th overall pick in 2019. He's someone that hasn't put it together in the major leagues, so I'm a little bit less interested in him. I mean, looking at his stats, he hit 167 in 22, 195 in 23, 243 in 24, and then 212 last year. He hasn't had major league success. He hasn't had he hasn't shown flashes of something really great the way that Adolis Garcia was. He is a left-handed hitting outfielder. He did have 10 home runs in 23, 20 in 24, and 14 in 25. So you can see that he's got some pop and maybe there's something there, but he's one I'm less interested in. However, he's also someone who will have less of a market and will come cheaper. So maybe he's worth taking a swing on as well. But if you were saying to choose between the Reclamation projects and betting on potential, I'd still much rather have Garcia.
Yeah, I think my thing with Bleday is what were we just talking about last week? Bringing back Jack Sawinski, and he's in that category of if I could sign up in blood for an OPS in the mid sixes, I'd rather have that than Jack Sawinski. JJ Bleday is exactly that. Even here at maybe a trough in his value, 698 OPS. The 212 batting average doesn't look great, but it's still 60 points better than where Jack Sawinski was, Colin. So that's why I can't scoff at anybody, in these situations. And we can talk about the Pirates spending money, but the more spots you can address cheaply, the more you can invest in difference-making guys. And that's where I think you could get a JJ Bleday. And is he good by objective major league standards right now? No. Would he still be a massive upgrade on where the Pirates have been? Probably. So I would consider it maybe a little bit more than you.
I don't mind considering it, but if the Pirates go into 2026 and their starting left fielder is either Jack Sawinski or JJ Bleday, they have bigger issues. It'll be the same thing over again. They need to be looking for something more aggressive. As a left-handed bat off the bench, sure, you can give either guy a shot there, but you still need to go for a more major upgrade in left field than either of these two guys.
I mean, I agree with that, but I have watched this team for too much of my life to believe that they would not at least try to consider that. So we will see how that plays out. Colin, thank you for your time and expertise today. We'll probably take some time for the rest of the week because of the Thanksgiving holiday here on the PG Pirates channel. If there's some breaking major news, we'll be back. But otherwise, we will probably see you again next week with whatever other headlines pop up in Pirates world ahead of the MLB Winter Meetings. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.